All right, welcome to Comfortably Uncomfortable. You've got Sandy and Alex here, and we are here to empower women to choose courage over comfort by getting comfortably uncomfortable. We get real and cut through the bullshit. Are you ready to get a little weird? Because we're going to laugh, sweat, cry, and grow together.
No topic is going to be TMI. Well, maybe for me, but not for Sandy. We complement each other in that way. Okay, so are we ready?
Well, yeah, duh, I am, but are you?
Okay, let's go.
The one with the sweat. Ew, gross, sweat.
Well, I don't sweat, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Shut the fuck up.
No.
She already knew. She already knew she could get me with saying that because we've talked about this. I'm like, I don't actually say that when people tell me, but I do. I'm like,
I hope not. You might lose a few clients that way.
Well, usually my first question is, okay, do you have like a medical diagnosis that you have the inability to sweat? Because that does exist. Like,
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like people are out there that cannot sweat. And I know some of you are like, oh, I wish I had that. And I'm like, no, you don't. Trust me, you do not. Sweat is good. We need sweat.
Yep.
Yet, I'm going straight there. I'm going there. No one told me that after having a baby, my vagina would sweat more than it's ever sweated before.
Is this something you think you just noticed more now, or you just definitely didn't? It definitely didn't happen before.
Okay. I've always been a sweater. Sweater. That's funny. Here's a funny, I don't know if my gymnast friends remember this, but I can't remember. It was some like regional camp or something and we were in this facility. I do not remember where, but the air conditioning was not working. It was the middle of summer. It was awful. And people started laughing and they were like, Sandy. And I was like, what? It's because like my leotard switched colors because I was sweating so much, except for where my sports bra was. So like legitimately, I sweat through my leotard everywhere except where I had 2 layers, right? Yeah. So I've always been known to be the sweaty one. So to answer your question, no, I've always sweat and I've always been aware of it. I kind of always been a little self-conscious about it. So holding hands, like I was like, oh, I have sweaty palms, or sweating through shirts.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, after having a baby, I was like, this crotch sweat is like real. Like, what is happening?
Well, so, and I will get into it, but I find what I wanted to know more about researching for this episode was like exercise sweat versus stress sweat.
Yes.
And what I learned is that actually, like your genitals have more of those sweat glands, like the stress. Sweat glands.
Yep. So those are
the people.
They're called the apocrine glands.
Okay.
And they're usually in the armpits and in the groin, and it's typically where we have hair, right? Or us women have hair more so. So that's exactly right. And those are more of the stinky, smelly, and they attract more bacteria, which is why like that's kind of where the smell is coming from, is like bacteria happening, not so much just the sweat in itself. And then the whole body is covered in these, I always pronounce this wrong, but esrin or esrin glands, which are those that are activated during exercise. And so that is absolutely right. Like you have them more in the crotch and you have them more in the armpits. So yeah, maybe I was more emotional and I was more stressed.
I mean, who knows? Maybe just like a higher level of anxiety and stress. I mean, given those two situations, like leading up to a meet, or I don't know what you call it in gymnastics.
Yeah.
And then after a baby, you're just like high level of stress all the time. I mean,
absolutely,
just like chronic kind of underlying.
Yeah. Or I mean, the other thing too was like there's so much blood flow down there because you
Mm-hmm.
just, had a baby. Maybe it's, I don't know. I haven't looked nor asked, and I don't think people have research. Be like, okay, if you had a cesarean birth, do you have more crotch sweat versus did you have a vaginal birth? Do you have more crotch sweat? Like, I'm not sure that research is out there. I mean, maybe, I don't know.
Right. Well,
But
I think one sweat thing that all postpartum moms have in common are the night sweats when you're
oh,
releasing
oh
all
my
of those
gosh.
hormones. I mean,
Yeah.
no one told
Yeah.
me that was a thing.
Oh, so,
I
so
mean,
true.
what in the world? Having to wash your sheets every night like you wet the bed? I mean, it was just insane.
Yep. Yep. I mean, that just goes to say, like, your body is going through so much in that transition
Right.
of just like it's working overtime of
Right.
getting all the things to do what they need to do.
Oh.
It's insane. But coming back to like, I don't sweat. And when it comes to exercise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever encountered clients that tell you of like, oh, it doesn't matter how much I work or I just don't sweat during exercise?
I mean, I've definitely heard it. I don't know that I've like confronted it head on with someone.
Okay.
Yeah,
I have one
but
client in particular that I am thinking of in my, time exercising people. I don't know. What do I do? I
training
do all sorts
people.
of things, training,
Yeah, right.
whatever. Um, and it was interesting because it took some, because at first, obviously, my first question was like, well, are you diagnosed with this? Like, this is, sweat is a temperature regulator.
Right.
So if you are increasing your body temperature, your body's going to try and combat that and
Right.
cool it off, which is
Right.
why we
Right.
sweat, right?
Right.
But it is true. People who live in higher temp locations adapt to it and don't
Mm-hmm.
sweat as much, right?
Sure.
And they're just common, homeostasis just walking
Mm-hmm.
around.
Yeah.
And then what's interesting is that higher trained athletes actually sweat more and faster.
That's so interesting, and I noticed that in myself when I was doing CrossFit regularly. I sweat more than I've ever sweat in my life. But then
Yeah.
when I stopped, like it reduced again. I'm not
Yeah.
a heavy sweater. I get to a point where I sweat, but
Yeah. So a part of it
that's
is
so
the
interesting. Yeah.
intensity. Part of it
Right.
is the intensity.
Oh, sure, sure, sure.
And then the other part is the efficiency of your body regulating and
Mhm.
being able to like bring your body temperature back down. And so
Mhm.
the reason why athletes have a tendency to sweat more and sweat quicker is because they've trained, like literally you have
Yeah.
trained your body to
Yeah.
be efficient in cooling.
Uh-huh.
And so if
Yeah.
you can cool your body, guess what? You can do more. You can
Right.
go more.
Right. Right.
And that's
Harder,
why you sweat.
faster. Yeah.
All of it. All of
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
this particular client pride themselves on not sweating. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. Like I had to figure out, is it an intensity thing or
Yeah.
is it a endurance? I haven't really done much exercise out of my comfort zone thing.
Right.
And so I came to find like they were pretty fit. Like they passed kind of my, cardiovascular test. They weren't getting breathy and all this. And I was like, oh, okay. And what I found was they're a steady state person. So a lot of their exercise was like low, steady state
Right.
stuff.
Right. Right. Okay.
And so for this person in particular, I was like, okay, like this is good. I obviously love it. We talked about it in the cardio episode. I'm like, you're doing great. Your heart sounds
Yeah.
great. You're
Yeah.
you're fit. You're da 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 da.
Right.
And I was introducing weights and we started doing some interval training. And
Mhm.
this person was like, holy crap, you are the first person that's ever made me sweat.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And it was really cool to watch this whole like transformation
Yeah.
of like prying yourself like I don't sweat to this idea of like, oh, well, sweat can be a method to train my body differently.
Mhm. Right.
And
Right.
so that's where I always tell them, like,
That's a
if you
cool
tell
story.
yourself you're not sweating and you're not doing the results that you want, or you're wanting to try something different.
Mhm.
Because I've also
Yeah.
had people who sweat like crazy or say they don't sweat when they do high intensity stuff. And then I put them on a treadmill and I'm like, you can't go higher than this. You got to go here. It takes them a little bit, but then all of a sudden they're like drenched in sweat
Hmm.
going this long distance.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Now, here's the thing. I don't feel like I'm brave enough, maybe because I have a crotch sweat thing, but what are your feelings on the light colored leggings and like the sweat shaming and the like insecurities of like wearing clothing that shows sweat?
Um, I don't personally ever wear light color leggings. I feel like I've just had too many like period incidents in my life. It's just not a thing I'm willing to do. It's not about the sweat for me.
Okay,
But
okay.
yeah, I don't know. I like wearing dark colors.
I pretty much only own black and I have one pair of purple. And I've just realized like I totally have some
Yeah.
insecurities about sweat. And like I've kind of gotten over my armpit sweat. Like I've even like in teaching class, I'll be like, lift your hands up, show me your armpit sweat, and like it's a thing. But I totally notice that like my crotch sweat, I'm like, I don't want to wear anything but black because I feel like I'm just gonna sweat through my
Well, but then,
crotch.
yeah, just then do what you're comfortable in, right? Like everyone has their reasons. I've got
But here's
mine,
the
not
question is like,
yours.
but like, why do we shame sweat? Like, why is that like a icky thing? Like
Well, I
how many
mean,
ads are
because
there for antiperspirant and trying to prevent you from sweating or like
I don't
showing your
know.
sweat
I mean,
pains?
when my husband comes home from a hard workout, I'm like, go to the shower. You
Well,
smell.
yeah,
You
it smells
smell.
bad.
It
Sure.
smells bad. I mean, simple.
Maybe
That's
I'm
my
just that. I
answer.
mean, there is somebody who over sweats. Like there's a
Get that
definition for that
sweaty
too.
shit into the washing machine. I don't want it anywhere in the
Yeah.
house.
I don't know. For me, it's like I do notice, like I notice myself, like if I go to an event, I don't want to have like the sweat stains. And obviously, like
Yeah.
people get Botox in their armpits
Yeah.
to try and prevent that. And like, the whole idea of getting like, natural deodorant versus antiperspirant. And like, because deodorant really just helps with the deodor, right? It's the bacteria part of
Yeah.
it. The antiperspirant is the one that's trying to prevent you from sweating. So, like,
Right.
blocking or creating a barrier for those glands to get through. And yeah, it just came, I don't know, it came back to this whole idea of like, why do we think it's gross? Like when you see somebody sweating, like I definitely,
Right.
I'm conditioned that way of like, ooh, like
No, and
unless you're in the gym, right? Like
right. And then
unless
you're
you're
like,
like,
damn, they're working hard. That's awesome.
yeah, like I'm thinking like the Cubs game. Like
Yeah.
I've totally in previous of like, I'm at the Cubs game, it's freaking hot and people
I
are
know.
sweating and
Yeah.
like,
Well,
I
then
have to
at
check
least you're all
myself.
in it together.
Yeah, but like I'll be cognizant and I'll be like, oh, I should
Yeah.
wear a shirt that like won't
Yeah.
show my pit
Yeah.
stain or something. And then sometimes I'm like, why? Like I'm
Right.
cooling my body. My body is doing what it's supposed to do.
Yep. I don't know. I don't have a great answer for you on that.
Okay, it's just me. If you're out there with me, let me know. But I don't know. I just find it interesting of like when did that start where like sweat was gross? I mean, I don't disagree. Like it's one of those things where it's like I don't like being sweaty, like just for like hygiene purposes.
Yeah.
You know, if you sweat, I do not recommend you to sweat and then like stay in your clothes like I've had to do at
Right.
work many, many of the
Right. Right.
times. We didn't bring this up in our boob episode, but trying to get a sweaty sports bra
Oh
off,
God. Yeah. That's
like
fun.
I would teach a class and then have a training session and I'd be in the bathroom and I'm like, you can't see me right now, but I'm like struggling to take this thing off. And then I have like baby wipes to like clean myself before my next client. And it's one of those things where it's like, that's just like a personal preference of like, I don't like sitting there. But then even more so, it's just
Right.
not hygienic because of
Right.
the bacteria.
Right. Well, and like, I mean, natural deodorant, going back to that, like I'm trying. And for the most part, like it's okay. Even working out, I don't like workout sweat. I don't think it's that bad. But then even after like you put me on the spot with these podcast
I know,
episodes,
I'm
and I
still
just like
sweating.
I stick so bad after I
It
record
smells
these
good.
episodes.
By the way, I'm smelling my armpit right now. It actually smells
And
fine.
it does,
You know people who are having anxiety or,
yeah.
uncomfortable and like
Yeah.
that's where the sweat's coming from. And so I think just from a being kind perspective, like we should be more kind to each other
Absolutely.
because if we see people
Absolutely.
who are sweating, maybe they're really uncomfortable and they're in a position of like not just
Yeah.
it's hot uncomfortable and I'm sweating trying to cool my
Yeah.
body, but it's like I'm in a situation that is just yeah, not just comfortably uncomfortable, but legit
Totally
uncomfortable.
uncomfortable. No. And I mean, I was totally making light of it before, but you are 100% correct because it's just your body doing its job. It's doing what it needs to do to get you through.
When there's some, so this is going to be like some researchers of showing like the evolutionary perspective of this, of like
Uh-huh.
the reason smelly sweat is like to ward off predators.
Oh man.
So maybe next time if you're stressed and emotional and you smell bad and it's because of that sweat, it's like, yeah, if you don't like it, it's because you're not supposed to be in my life. I don't know. Like
It's
it
like the
could be
fight or
that.
flight, like
Yeah, like
get
get
away.
away. It's like a
Get away.
skunk, right? The skunk gets
Yeah,
scared. It's
yeah.
like,
Oh my god. It's
so we're
funny.
all part skunk. I don't
Yeah.
know. But it is
So
interesting as far as like exercise clothes and like this
yeah.
the wicking stuff that like helps
Yeah.
you prevent. A lot of times when those are stinky and it's not because of the actual sweat, it's because of the bacteria that's mixing in with the sweat.
Yeah.
So bacteria is the
Sitting
one to
there.
blame. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so that's why you have to make sure you wash them correctly or adequately,
Yeah.
because if not, you have bacteria sitting in all of these like sweat fibers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Know all about that.
So
So one of the
good.
reasons why we did this episode is because someone asked me that they about recording an episode about night sweats. So we made it a little more
Yeah.
general to all sweats, but I want to make sure to bring it back there for my special
Mhm.
friend who asked me about that, because I think, we talk about it postpartum, but then years later, like, why are do you have night sweats? And I
Menopause,
know,
right?
well, that's definitely a reason. That's definitely a cause of it. But I mean, I think otherwise, like, you can just have hormonal fluctuations. I mean, speaking
Oh,
for
yeah.
myself personally, when I was speaking to a dietitian trying to learn a little bit more about my hormones and, what can peak them and maybe what would cause me to sweat at night, she was saying, like, alcohol and caffeine. Like,
Damn
those
alcohol.
are things. What's that?
I said, damn alcohol.
I know, damn it. All
Affects
the
our
time.
sleep, affects
I know
everything.
everything. And that can cause so many fluctuations in like cortisol levels and your hormones throughout the day, and then you're like releasing it at night. Or I mean, if you've had too much to drink, if you've ever gotten like the sweats at night, I mean, that's totally happened to me before. Like, I can
Or
relate
when
it on a
you
night when I've
smell
had too
them.
much,
Yeah.
but then, like, just during the week, that's not great. So need
I
to
mean, we talk.
rein.
Well, what is it like when people, they're hungover and like they're sweating? And I've definitely had
You can
clients
like
where,
smell it.
oh,
Yeah,
yeah. I'm like,
yeah,
did you have
yeah,
whiskey last night?
yeah.
Maybe. It's like
Yeah,
you smell it. Like that's
yeah,
what's so cool about our
yeah.
bodies. It's just like so many things are happening on the inside that it has to figure and regulate itself out, and that is
Right,
totally a way. Sweating is to take stuff out, right?
right.
To release.
Yeah, exactly. So I know, like, for me personally, that was the thing. And then, there were a few other, when I was trying to look it up, a few more things listed, but a lot of it, it's like stress, anxiety. There could be plenty of other underlying issues, menopause, don't go on WebMD and look it up, is all I'll say.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I
for
think
my
it's one of
friend,
those
I don't have
things.
a great
Yeah.
answer for you, but it like, other than, I think it's like habits and tracking and getting to know
Yes,
yourself
yourself.
a little bit more, and understanding like what nights does that happen, and maybe where are you in your cycle, or what did you have too much caffeine over the past few days, or too much alcohol, and like, just see if you can connect any dots.
You absolutely. I think that is spot on because it's going to depend. It's going to depend
Yeah.
on the person. It's going to depend. And you might notice and be like, oh, well, yeah.
And then you
Okay.
notice something you don't want to notice, and
Exactly.
just
So
ignore it again.
here's an interesting topic when
Yeah.
relating to sweat therapy. So like saunas or, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
um, these rituals that people
Yeah.
might travel miles to go do. I think there was
Sure.
one on like the Down to Earth with Zach of like just essentially a sauna, like a steam room,
Yeah.
sauna, whatever. What are your thoughts, feelings? Did you find anything on those?
You know what? I did not touch on those at all. I didn't even cross my mind actually when I was doing the research, but I love a good sauna.
I'd have to do more research and looking into saunas. The thing that I found that was interesting is, people who swear by them and say, oh, it's like, it's the best thing. I come back down to saying like, or like, what was the Bikram yoga was like a big
yeah.
thing. And it's like, I have to sweat to make this workout be worth it.
Yeah.
And my thing was always like, no, like it depends on what the goal is. Like there might be a certain threshold that I might get you to sweat. Again, like my client of like always here, and like now I'm changing the demand that person was used to.
Sure.
But sweat doesn't indicate a quality workout. Right. So like that's what I'm saying. Like people say like, oh, I just go to the sauna. I can't talk. The sauna, and I just like sweat it out. It's like for some people, that's great. It might feel really good.
Yeah.
I personally, because I'm hypotensive, I have low blood pressure, I have low blood sugar. I fainted when I went and did Bikram.
Yeah.
Like I did.
Yeah, I mean, I almost faded and I don't have any of that. So
and don't tell, well, you might already know this, but like when I taught my hot yoga classes, like they weren't as hot as Bikram, but whenever I taught it, I had to put it down because I couldn't teach at that temperature. And I wouldn't tell people and nobody ever noticed because they still were exactly. But that's where it's like, just check yourself of like, sweat is not an indicator of always being the best workout. So like you can have great workouts and not sweat. You can have great workouts and sweat a lot. So it's finding that balance and that dose, and then do what you need to do, but and what feels good, but always come back to saying, how can I do this? I don't know. Au naturel. I don't know.
Enjoy a good sweat session or don't, and do it another day.
Exactly. Thank you for showing up today. Getting awkward is always more fun with friends. Give us a review, tag us, and share us so we can continue to grow together.
Use hashtag CUPod, letter C, letter U, or tag us. You can find Sandy on Instagram at sweatandShineOn and Alex at aj.afterbabyfit on Instagram and afterbabyfit on Facebook and YouTube. We'll see you next time.